Strange Animals Podcast brings you weekly family-friendly episodes about surprising, mysterious, or just plain strange animals. From colossal squid to hummingbirds, tune in to discover your new favorite animal. Find us at strangeanimalspodcast.blueberry.net or subscribe through your favorite podcast app.
Hello and welcome, friends and enemies. It's you time.
It's an unofficial Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Samantha.
And the jingle jangling you hear is my pup, Lenny Briscoe.
It's Lenny.
He's here too. And so is Curtis.
Curtis is around.
So...
He's happy today, though, because Mac and Lenny are here. Although Mac's outside, so that might upset him.
Who knows what's going to happen.
We're not sure.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, yet again. Do we have any updates before we begin on this cold fall day?
I don't know that I have any Unsolved Mysteries or podcast-related updates, but I do think you need to tell us about your most recent spooky activity.
Oh, okay. That was kind of going to be my recommendation, but we can start off with it.
Sure.
So, last night I did one of the coolest things in my entire life, and Samantha was not there because she has an early bedtime.
It's true.
And more than once, me and Caitlin were like, man, Samantha really missed out.
I believe that I really missed out.
So I went to the historic home, the Alexander Ramsey House in St. Paul with friend of the pod, Rochelle, and also our friend Caitlin. And
purported to be haunted, I believe.
I don't even know. I know nothing about this home. Literally, Caitlin found this event that was Victorian seance, fact or fiction. And I was like, yep, I'm in. And tickets were $24, and I was like, that seems a little, like, kind of a lot to go to a historic home, but I like a historic home. I did an internship at a historic home, and, spooky season.
Yeah.
Why hold back, right? And I was like, I'm buying my ticket, we're in. So, we get there. First of all, the ticket just said, like, the doors will be open half an hour beforehand, but it didn't specify, like, which doors, and, it's kind of a big house.
Right.
So we walked up to, like, the grand, like, front door of the home, and it's already, like, very spooky looking. It's, like, the perfect place to be going. This is also, like, Saturday night before Halloween. Everybody is out, like, in costume, wasted, and the three of us are like, we're going to a historic home to learn about seances. So I was like, I love this already. We go up to this, like, very creepy looking house. Caitlin, like, puts out her hand to, like, slowly open the door because we're not sure if we're, like, interrupting the tour before us, And so she opens the door, and then there's just another door. And then that door is locked.
Okay.
So we're just standing...
That's spooky.
In the dark on the porch of this very spooky house going, okay, I guess this isn't the way... So we're just wandering around the outside of the house in the dark, trying to figure out where we're supposed to go. But it has a gift shop sort of off to one side, and that's actually where you're supposed to meet. So then we go in, we're, like, waiting on little folding chairs, and I'm assuming someone's going to come out, they're going to give us a little history of the house, then we're going to, like, maybe walk around the house, maybe look at a few creepy objects, and talk about seances.
That's what I would have expected.
I was expecting something very dry. I was still 100% in, very excited. But then this woman in period dress comes out and was like, okay, so no food, no flash photography, blah, blah, blah. And let's go inside the house and begin the seance. And me and Caitlin just looked at each other like, what?
An actual seance?
We're here for a seance. This is I'm more excited for this than my own wedding. We were both like, and then Rochelle was like, yeah, what did you guys think we were here for? Because, of course, she actually, like, went to the website and read all the information and did her homework. And the two of us were just like, I don't know. We just thought it sounded cool. That's why we're here.
Sounds about right.
So we go into the home. We meet the medium. He tells us a little bit about Victorian seances, different types of ghosts, how he's been doing this research, and then it's like, okay, we're going to go into the other room. It's going to be dark. There's just going to be one candle around this circle table that has a black velvet tablecloth. It's pitch black in there. There's just, like, 2 circular rows of chairs. If you could, like, make your seat, stay with your friends, but maybe nothing will happen. That's okay. Da-da-da-da-da. And then he had a few volunteers write a question that someone who has passed on, only they would know the answer to. put them in a little envelope that was going in a box. We all go into this pitch black room. Particularly men were pretending that they were not scared when they clearly were. It was the ambience of this was like overwhelmingly creepy and like so cool. So then he's like, "Oh no, I forgot the slates in the other room. Excuse me." And he like leaves to go get the slates.
And you're all just in there in the dark by yourself.
We're just all sitting there in the pitch dark with only one candle, like, ha! And everybody's like joking because they're honestly like kind of scared. And it was great.
That's amazing.
So then he comes back in. He does some like, you know, I had to write the name of someone who had died. Someone else had to write the name of someone who was alive. And then you switch them around and he like is able to see these names. Suddenly a glass behind me like tumbles off a shelf. You hear little creepy noises happening.
Ooh.
He does this whole thing where like we are all given these slates and we check to make sure they're blank, but then they end up answering one of the questions that's in this box.
Ooh.
He's like, okay, like reveals it, and then it's like, right?
Spooky.
It's very spooky. And then the light just goes out. There's like a scream, a bell is ringing that you've been told is like associated with a ghost. And then you just see this like orb. And he's yelling like, you see that, right? You have to tell me that you see that. And everybody's like, ah! And then at that point, the lights flash on. Someone from the historic home runs in and is like, you're being arrested for fraud. And then everybody applauds. And then he did the rundown of how they would have faked that.
That's so
back
cool.
in the day, and it was so cool. It was such a like honestly
so cool.
kind of creepy experience. And it was so nice to get like swept away, and like it's not really real, but you also like don't know how he's doing it,
right?
So you just get like swept away in this little experience, and then he's like, yeah, he kind of it involved a lot of sleight of hand, and honestly, even with him explaining to it, I was like, what? That's very complicated,
right? Like
the way he was able to like, misdirect you, and you thought that what you had written on was like still visible, but it was actually like tucked in his hand so he could read it. And he's like slipping in a slate that's already written on, and all the ones you've examined that are blank, and like
that's really impressive.
It was actually very impressive. I didn't notice any of the like apparently one guy saw him put something in his pocket, but nobody else had seen any of the like sleight of hand stuff. And he was explaining how back in the day, Victorians had found a way to make silk glow in the dark. So they would have people dress up and come in the room as ghosts. Someone had a trained monkey that they would use as part of their shtick, which he said was his eventual goal.
His eventual goal was to have a monkey?
Yeah, that he could use as part of the parlor tricks.
Amazing.
And because people would have these, like, parlors set up in grand houses specifically to have these fake seances and deceive people. So there would be entire rooms full of these glow-in-the-dark costumes so that actors could come down hidden stairways and trap doors. And because people could make a lot of money off of this. So they would have these very elaborate setups where really people in another room were passing you the slates supposedly ghosts had written on. And it's so elaborate that you would think, oh, well, no one would actually go through all that trouble.
Right.
And that's how your mind like kind of can't catch up with what's happening, is you're like, well, there's no way they have 50 glow-in-the-dark costumes hidden up in the ceiling. It's like, but they do.
Amazing.
It was honestly one of the coolest things ever.
That's so cool. I'm really sad that I missed it. I was like, this is just too late. I sort of already had plans in the evening, and then I was just like, I'd have to get to St. Paul. It'd be really, but I wish I would have stayed up for it. So I hope they do it again, because it'd be really fun to do.
When I was buying my ticket, I was like, $24 seems like a lot for me to go hear about Victorian era whatever. And then I was like, this is the best money I've ever spent. I've never been so fully, like, happy with all of my life choices. But it was kind of popular. So the earlier times had sold out. We were there at 10, and they had another show at 11. So they were sort of like, all right. I had a lot of questions. I would have loved to grill that guy. But he was like, yeah, you got to get out of here so we can get the next people in.
Amazing.
Because he told this whole story about how he was connected to this certain ghost. Like there was this elaborate ghost backstory before we started the seance to sort of like sell you on the idea that this ghost was going to like come and ring a bell. He had this like creepy doll's hand that he claimed.
Of course.
The girl used to hold in this coal chute while she was being punished by her, like all this stuff to like really sell you on the spooky experience. Oh, it's so good.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. I I don't even know what to say. It
There's
was a great time.
Few photos on our Instagram. Go check out our Instagram
I
story highlight.
wasn't supposed to take a photo inside the house, apparently. I thought that was just flash, but I definitely took one right after the seance, so you can go see that. I'm sorry, Alexander Ramsey House. I misunderstood the rules. I was taking a picture of a mirror that looked creepy, and this woman was like, no.
You can't take pictures.
You can't take pictures. Like, as Rochelle is taking a picture in the other room. Because we were like, oh, this is so amazing. We have to come here all the time. Because they had some other really cool events this season that I wasn't able to go to. They had one about Twin Cities madams from the era. They had one about Victorian novels. It seems like they're doing a lot of cool programming over there. So
that's awesome.
I'll just do my recommendation now, so that, I guess, is my recommendation. I realize that's really local and specific, but if you look into historic homes by you might be surprised that they would have events you'd actually be interested in.
Yeah.
That aren't quite so boring.
Yeah, it's not just like a tour, but that's cool too. But it's fun to go and do events like that. I know the Glassner House in Chicago does a Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven reading every Halloween. Ooh. And I'm sure other historic homes have more spooky content than, or do candlelight tours or do some sort of ghost tour. So even if you don't really think you're interested in that thing, maybe you are. Maybe you are. That's my recommendation. We'll start off the show with that. That's nice. That's a nice way to get this show started because honestly, this episode's really good. And I think we're really already just out of the gate. Yes. This is finally, I'm not complaining at all. This is a solid episode. Yeah. This is a good goddamn episode. We probably lost all the listeners that, were aren't they supposed to like Unsolved Mysteries? That one review that's if you like people complaining about the thing you're supposed to love, that you're supposed to like, this is the show for you. Well, I have much fewer complaints this episode. Yeah. Because it's same. It's quality. Okay, let's jump in. Liz, are you going to eat these zombie Skittles? Oh, also, as you might recall, we were talking on an early episode about zombie Skittles, which occasionally have a Skittle that tastes like rotten. It tastes like jalapenos and barf. Yep. But the rest of them are good flavors. I just randomly was given one little fun-sized pack of them. And I was like, oh, maybe if I leave it. Sometimes I leave stuff at Samantha's spot on the table for when she comes in. I was like, maybe if I just leave these, she'll get inspired to eat them. But I didn't really think that she would. I picked it up and I was like, I'm not eating these. Although the packaging is very cute. And it says, most are delicious, but some taste like rotten zombie. Dare to try? No. I did put up an Instagram poll asking if we should eat these on the podcast, and I feel like people are saying yes, but we're not going to do it, so sorry. Yeah, it turns out we're actually not bound by the law of internet polls, so... I mean, you would have to pay me a lot of money to eat that. When right next to the zombie Skittles are gummy chicken feet, which actually taste good. So gummy soda bottles. Yes. Yeah. And some gummy eyeballs. Yeah, we have other treats. We don't need the stupid zombie Skittles. No. That just ended up here. And what we're drinking today, in case you were interested, was some cranberry wine from Trader Joe's. 'Tis the season. Well, last episode, when we were talking about how we'd be talking about the Yeti today, I said, oh, let's have an abominable snowman party. I still don't know what that is. I still don't know what that means. Not really sure. So, in celebratory whatever, we have some cranberry wine that I'm very classy. I put a blackberry in it. It's very classy. So we can celebrate that we finally get to talk about Yetis today. Finally. You have to wait, though. It's coming later in the episode. It's coming, but that's a teaser. Yeah, that's a teaser. What they call it in the trade. First, we get A Lost Love, which... a great way to start out an episode, as far as I'm concerned. It's a very sad, but it's also a really good lost love. And it starts off with my very first note here. Wow, this country sucks. Go ahead, Samantha. All right. It's 1953 in Buffalo, New York, and we learn that interracial relationships were still considered taboo. Huh. 17-year-old Eleanor Platt didn't give a fuck. She became interested in a local man by the name of John Elias. He was African-American and 11 years her senior. They began dating that winter. The two were inseparable and soon fell in love. I mean, that picture of him back in the day, handsome. Smoking. And the actor that got to play him looked very much like him. Yeah. And I was kind of like, yeah, I get it, Eleanor. Because she's like, hey, they show a reenactment of her at a table with her friends at a diner, cafe or something. And she's like, hey, look at that guy over there. I think he's hot. And her friends are like, you're crazy. We're racist and you're crazy. And she's like, I don't care. And she just got up. She's like, I'm going to go seductively suck on this lollipop by him. And it worked. Yeah. So that was great.
She had good seduction techniques.
So they fell in love. When John eventually asked Eleanor to marry him, she eagerly agreed and made the decision to leave home as her family did not agree with their relationship.
She literally climbs out a second floor window, according to the reenactment, with a hat box.
She has 2 large suitcases that she just throws off the roof. I'm like, there's no way her parents wouldn't hear that. But she successfully snuck away from home.
It does seem like her father was pretty much always drunk, so maybe he was passed out.
Probably. So she snuck out of her parents' house at the end of December 1953 and lived with John until January 26, 1954. Her reason for returning home was that she had become pregnant, and she seems to think throughout the story that if she just tells her parents she's pregnant with his baby, then suddenly they'll come around. Or if she just tells her parents that she loves him, that suddenly they'll come around. And it's kind of misguided and naive, but I understand that she really wanted them to accept her relationship.
She does not understand the power of white supremacy.
That's true.
Because it somehow doesn't seem to have really affected her, despite being this, like, very racist day and age.
Yeah.
She loved John. She didn't give a fuck. And she was like, my parents will see the light.
They'll come around.
Yeah, and she was just very wrong.
Yeah, and John was apprehensive of telling Eleanor's parents.
John was a little bit more grounded in reality. I think John kind of, he knew what was up.
He understood what would happen.
He experienced his life.
He knew what the consequences of her telling her parents would be. He tried to convince her that it wasn't a good idea, that only bad could come of it, but she was convinced that she wanted to do it. So she returned home to her parents and told them the news. Her father, who was an alcoholic and an overall asshole, was furious.
I hope that's what it says on his grave.
He was an alcoholic and an overall asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
name, birth date, death date, alcoholic and overall asshole. That's it. And then the grave is untended.
Pretty much. So in the reenactment, he's like drinking some shots and slurring his words and yelling about how she needed to get out of his house.
He's in a dirty white tank top,
Of course.
Like, but still wearing a belt. Such a bad look. You know, he's still wearing, like, belted, pleated pants with his undershirt that's all stained.
Yeah,
he's, like,
not a good look.
Jowly and red-nosed.
Yep.
He's like, no daughter of mine is gonna be in love.
It's like,
no daughter of mine's gonna be happy.
I know, right?
I'm not gonna stand for it.
It's like, well, your wife really made a good choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I want you as unhappy as your mother. It's a family tradition.
Pretty much. So this is where the story gets kind of
very sad.
So Eleanor is sent to a home for unwed mothers. John was accused of rape. He was arrested at his job and charged with raping her and holding her against her will. The newspapers even ran stories that said that he held her captive for months, which of course was not true. And he ended up pleading guilty to the charges in order to keep Eleanor from having to go through with through a trial.
He clearly loved her so much.
Yeah, he thought he was protecting her, and I mean, it's so sad. All right, on September 13th, 1954, Eleanor gave birth to a daughter whom she named Rosemary in the home for unwed mothers. She was forced to give her daughter up to social services shortly after, while there was like some sort of investigation. John was released from jail early for good behavior, and him and Eleanor reunited. At this point, she had been released from the home because she had given her daughter to social services. They planned to marry and try and get Rosemary back, but then they made the poor decision to again tell her parents.
Why?
I don't know.
Just burn their house down and move on.
I don't know. I
have such good relationship advice.
Please,
please come to me. You can, send me a message on Twitter. Say, what should I be doing in this situation? And every time I'm going to be like, dump him.
Every time.
Dump him. And then in this situation, burn your parents' house down, move to another town, change your name. Just tell people you're already married. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like
for other people.
In the 50s, you could literally move like one county over and I would be like, oh, my name is Violet Von Trapp, and I am Norwegian royalty, and I'm here. And then people would just be like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
No one would look into anything.
No, they wouldn't. So not surprisingly, Eleanor's father was again furious. He threatened John with a gun, and John was forced to flee. Then, Eleanor's parents had her arrested for failing to obey their orders.
Okay, we talk about what a nightmare today is. The past is a fucking absolute worst. What?
Yeah.
Why can you be... First of all, she's 18 years old at this point.
At this point, she's 18.
And they go to the police and they're like, my daughter is not obeying my every word, even though she is technically an adult. And the police were like, we're on it, chief.
Then they arrest her.
We roll up. We're going to...
This danger to society.
We know how to best protect and serve, and it's throwing your daughter in the clank. Or the clink, or whatever the fuck. So let me just drink my wine.
She was sentenced to a 3-year term at a juvenile detention center, but told that her sentence could be reduced if she gave Rosemary up for adoption. Something that seems completely illegal since she was 18.
Yeah. Also has, like, nothing to do with anything.
No. So
it's weird extortion.
In the reenactment, we see her, like, parents taking her to this office, and she sits in front of what's presumably a social worker, and the social worker forces her, essentially, to sign over her daughter for adoption.
And then it's like, one day I hope you realize you made the right choice, little girl.
And then present-day Eleanor is like, if I had just understood the law better, which you wouldn't expect her to, I would have realized that I didn't have to sign her away. I was 18. I could have just taken her and left.
Yeah.
And that's like the worst realization because this cannot be
How
legal.
would she know about that?
Well, she wouldn't have. And they knew that. That's why they were able to take advantage of her. She thought she was going to have to go to prison for 3 years.
Based on her thinking her parents are going to come around, it seems like, yeah, I do think she was a little naive. That's not really her fault. I'm guessing she was pretty sheltered.
No.
And there's just, why would she be familiar with this type of law?
She wouldn't be. And a judge sentenced her to 3 years.
Which I don't even understand how that's a thing or legal or
it can't be, but obviously it still
doesn't
happened.
Matter. Yeah,
it didn't seem to matter. Even still, she had to spend 6 months behind bars. She was released 6 months after the adoption took place. Eleanor wanted to be reunited with John, but could not find him. She later learned that he had been literally run out of town due to harassment by the police.
Okay, so this woman is in prison.
He can't find. He doesn't know what happened to her.
He doesn't know what happened to her.
No one will tell him.
I'm sure her dad or other town losers, from reading this newspaper story saying he's a kidnapper and a rapist,
right,
have like run him out of town on a rail. She's in prison, and her bunkmate's like, "Yeah, what you in for?" I stabbed a guy with a screwdriver in the eye, and she's like, "I did not obey my mama and papa." It's like, oh, tough one.
I know,
tough one.
This is wild.
Lock her up and throw away the key. She's like, well, I fell in love with a very kind, handsome man, and obviously now I'm here.
Obviously.
Yeah, the consequences of wanting to get married and have a child. Oh. Jail.
So due to complications from Rosemary's birth, Eleanor was unable to have any more children.
Oh.
In 1977, she married Stephen Wozniak, and they raised 4 foster children. John also remarried, and he and his second wife had 2 children. In 1987, he began searching for Rosemary. This search did not locate Rosemary, but it did put him in contact with Eleanor. They became friends, and with the blessing of both their spouses, they continued to search for their daughter.
I wish they could have gotten back together, though.
I know. Wouldn't that be such a nice love story? So,
I mean, it's kind of terrible, but kind of great.
So, the result of this case is that it's solved. Eleanor and John's daughter, Sally Riley, was found after her coworker saw the broadcast. She had known that she was adopted and received some information about Eleanor, but she was never able to locate Eleanor. She shared it with her coworker, who realized that she was Eleanor and John's long-lost daughter. A few days after the broadcast, Sally was reunited with Eleanor and John. They were able to meet their grandchildren for the first time. Sadly, John died in 2011 at 87 years old. But this is the sweetest reunion.
It's a really sweet reunion.
Yeah, I love that. This is a great lost love. Oh, and at one point, I guess there was an organization called the Society for Reuniting Families or something.
Yeah.
That was involved in making this happen. And I guess that's my new dream job. I don't know. Are they hiring? I want to if my work could be like Lost Loves.
That would be so great.
Amazing. I'm not sure how big of an industry that is, but
that could be. You could become a private detective. That could be what you specialize in.
I feel like I wouldn't have a knack for that though. I don't know.
Well,
I just know
there's only one way to find out.
That's true.
And it's you starting a private detective business tomorrow. This is the sweetest lost love. I don't know. It seemed like Rosemary was pretty happy in her life. We don't learn a ton about that. But I hope that learning the whole circumstances of how her parents were coerced and tricked into this adoption and it's not what they wanted, I hope that, I don't know, mended some wounds for her, made her feel better that it really
she was always
the circumstance of racist times, and they loved her and they wanted to get married and take care of her, and they just weren't allowed to because of disgusting reasons.
Yeah.
So,
this one was a really...
and it seems like they had a really nice reunion and got along, and I hope they, were able to keep in touch, and it's just so sweet.
I love it so much. All right. Your next one is less heartwarming.
Yeah, this is actually way less heartwarming. So, okay, now you're on the couch, maybe you got your cocoa, you're like, oh, this last love. I could cry because America is so horrible, but also cry because I'm so happy these people got back together. And then it's like, well, here's a downer.
Now we're going to talk about a drunk driving death.
Yeah, it's 1991 in Florida. There's a deadly highway accident that takes the life of 71-year-old John Constable and eventually his wife, Virginia. And this is what Robert Stack comes out to tell us. All too often, the victims of drunk driving become a faceless statistic, except to the people who have lost someone they love. So I feel like they are trying to sort of highlight a national problem by focusing on one story, but also this person was wanted, but it has a little moralistic lesson element of please do not drink and drive. Yeah. Because you could end up causing deaths, as seen here. So we see a reenactment of John and Virginia getting into the car, kind of squabbling about whether they've packed everything. They're about to embark on a 3-hour drive to Jacksonville to visit their daughter, who was expecting them. But they're only a couple miles from home when they are hit by James White, who was driving a pickup truck. He was a house painter and handyman. And Robert Stack's like, we don't know how long he'd been drinking before he hit the road or something like that. Yeah. So we see him sort of like, start to veer into the middle, then he swerves to hit a car, but then when he swerves, he swerves too far, so when he swerves back on, he ends up hitting, front on. Yeah. James and Virginia. The reenactment is brutal.
Yes, it is.
So, I don't know. So John died immediately on impact. Virginia was...
She was airlifted.
Yeah, to a trauma center, but unfortunately, because of her massive internal injuries, she died an hour after the accident. James White was put in an ambulance, and his blood sample was taken, and it would later show an alcohol level of 0.22, which is more than twice the legal limit of Florida. Their poor daughter was waiting for them to show up, so when they were really late, she eventually called the highway patrollers to sort of inquire. I'm sure she thought they had a flat tire, maybe they needed help. So when the highway patrol actually shows up at her house, she doesn't really think anything of it right away because she's called them.
Right.
So they show up and she's like, oh, thanks for responding to my call. Like, what can you tell me about my parents? And they're like, yeah.
Bad news.
So we have bad news. And then they tell her that it was a fatal accident. And she's like, oh my God, well, which person died? And they have to be like, both.
Yeah, it's so horrible.
So James was in the hospital with broken ribs and a broken jaw that was wired shut. And his family came to help him because I feel like they're much more understanding about their drunk driving relative than my family would be.
Yeah.
Because on the third day, his family is like wheeling him around in a wheelchair, and they at least in the reenactment, they pass the nurse's station, and the nurse is like, visiting hours are over. Where are you going? They're like, oh, we're just taking him on a little walk to get some fresh air. And she's like, all right, we'll be back in half an hour. But no, they've snuck James out, and so that he can flee prosecution for the deaths.
There's nothing but dirtbags in this one. Apparently they had been coming every day and getting him up to walk around. And
yeah, they were like helping with his rehab.
The police officer they interviewed for Unsolved Mysteries said that one night they just kept on walking. Yeah, don't break your relatives out of he just killed 2 people.
I feel like my family would be so supportive in almost every situation, but kind of not this.
Yeah.
Because he has a history of drunk driving and has actually had legal problems from it before. Right. It's not like this is the first time something like this has happened. Uh-huh. He's failed to get his behavior under control.
And 2 people are dead.
And now 2 people are dead. Unsolved Mysteries just said he had a long history of drunk driving arrests. I don't know if any charges had been brought or whatever in the past, but when the police tried to find him after he's broken out of the hospital, it turns out that the the address on his driver's license is not his actual residence. They go to that address, and the people there are like, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it seems like he just used that because it was like an address in a county that he wasn't in trouble with in Florida.
Sounds like it.
So, this goes out to the Unsolved Mysteries viewer. Have you seen this dirtbag, James White? He needs to answer for his crimes.
Yes.
And we get an update that he is captured. 2 days after the broadcast, viewers contacted the police. I'm reading this from Unsolved Mysteries Wiki, claiming that they had seen White at a bar in Burlington, Vermont. He was arrested in Burlington soon after. 2 weeks later, he returned to Florida to face the charges. He pleaded no contest to 2 counts of DUI manslaughter and was sentenced to 11 years in prison and 15 years of probation. His driver's license was permanently revoked, and he was also ordered to pay $12,000 to cover the burial expenses of James and Virginia. It's really, really sad. So he was released in 96. In 2010, he was found in violation of his probation.
Oh my God.
And turned to prison.
Oh.
He was released again in February 2013. This is a man who cannot, learn a lesson.
No.
I realize he's probably struggling with addiction, but this is putting other people in danger. And seriously, James, if you're listening, please call a cab.
Seriously.
Use an Uber. We need you to not be drinking and driving.
And the daughter, when she's interviewed for Unsolved Mysteries,
so sad.
She's like, this man has no remorse, which is really true.
Yeah.
He's not willing to face the consequences
Right.
of his actions. He has no remorse for the fact that he's killed 2 people, and he's willing to just run off.
Yeah, and not...
and then go out and do it again.
Yeah.
So...
This poor daughter had to bury both of her parents.
Ugh, it's terrible.
And he only had to pay $12,000 to cover literally their burial expenses. That's very sad. But I'm glad that this is another instance where Unsolved Mysteries helped bring a dirtbag to justice. Thank you, Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, he has a mustache, but not eligible.
No, never.
Okay. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Dun, 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 dun. Samantha, cheers.
Cheers.
To the Yetis of the world.
We're raising our glasses. Okay, I'm gonna...
Clink. Okay. You may have recalled earlier this season I said, my kingdom for a Yeti. I wanted a mystery about a Yeti so bad.
And here it is.
And I manifested that shit and it came to me.
Or as Robert Stack would call it, a Yeti. Or how does Robert Stack pronounce it? He enunciates.
Yeti.
A Yeti.
A Yeti.
A Yeti. So the Himalayas are home to the world's highest mountain and one of its most intriguing mysteries. For centuries, the Sherpa people native to the Himalayas have told frightening tales of strange half-man, half-ape called the Yeti.
Yes. At last.
The Yeti is also known as the Abominable Snowman.
Oh, why is that, Samantha? Where did that name come from?
So to the Sherpas, Yeti has always been very real and very much alive. Some Western explorers have found convincing evidence that the Sherpas may be right. When the first explorers arrived in the Himalayas and encountered the Sherpa people, actually, was it that they saw a Yeti? Anyway, he was described as smelling very bad. And so they first started calling him the Abominably Smelly Man, which didn't have a very good ring to it. Ladies, we're not talking about your husbands.
No, I've already told Mac he's the Abominably Smelly Man.
But it didn't have a very good ring to it. So in the newspapers, they eventually shortened it to the Abominable Man and then the Abominable Snowman. But I really think they should have stuck with Abominably Smelly Man.
Okay. I don't know that I really ever thought that much about Yetis or Abominable Snowmen before this segment. I'm not sure I knew that those were the same thing. I also definitely thought that they had white fur.
I've always pictured them with white fur, and maybe it's from that Christmas movie.
I think it's because when you say Abominable Snowman instead of Smelly Man, it seems like it would be white.
If it was the Abominably Smelly Man, it'd be brown.
Yeah.
Because it probably smells like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently the first Sherpa people told explorers that the Yeti smelled very bad, and that's where Abominably Smelly Man
Do you think that they
came
were
from.
implying, like you?
Maybe that was a misunderstanding.
They were like, oh, explorers, you smell terrible.
And they probably really did.
They probably really did.
They were like covered in lard and just sweating.
And they were like, could you go home and also clean up?
And maybe never come back?
And never come here.
We already live here?
Try to steal our mummified Yeti hands.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to the heist later. All right. So several expeditions have uncovered mystifying stories of strange human-like creatures who live in the Himalayas.
What noise do you think a Yeti makes?
One guy One guy who I think just mistook a Yeti for his own reflection later in the in the segment describes a very loud shrieking, but that could be anything. I'm sure that's exactly what it sounded like.
Oh, okay.
Oh, several expeditions have uncovered mystifying stories of strange human-like creatures who live in the Himalayas. In 1951, Eric Shipton, a world-famous mountaineer, came across a curious set of tracks. This was the first clear evidence that the Yeti might in fact be real. And we see a photograph of it. It's described as a very big piece of physical evidence because it shows toes, individual toes. It showed a squat, square footprint, which a lot of other expeditions had also found, but not had good photographic equipment with them.
I mean, it looks real fake, but...
yeah. Or maybe a bear? I don't know. Like...
It kind of looks like you found a big, slightly deformed leaf and you just, like, stepped on it to make a print.
These are footprints in the snow primarily, which one, like, explorer later tells us that snow can, like, blow away and distort what you're seeing.
Sure.
So, who knows? We do see a plaster mock-up of the footprint. It's 13 inches long and 8 inches wide. It didn't look like it was made by man or ape, according to people that have described it. In 1957,
That's how I'm going to describe everything from now on. What kind of dog do you have? Neither man nor ape.
You have neither Great Dane nor German Shepherd.
Yeah. It's like, okay,
but
very helpful.
But what is
very
it?
helpful.
In 1957, a Texas oil man named Tom Slick.
Okay, can we talk about that name?
He was an oil man and his name was Tom Slick.
That's like a cartoon.
I know.
That's not real. I don't believe anything in this segment, not because it's about Yetis, but because this guy's name is supposedly Tom Slick.
I know.
No.
I know.
Garbage.
He and explorer Peter Byrne set off for the Arun Valley in northeastern Nepal in search of the Yeti. Peter Byrne tells us how he came to believe that Yetis are real. Are you ready for this? Mm-hmm. He says, quote, Tom Slick's interest in the beginning was to find out if the Yeti were really there, and that's the reason he came on the first reconnaissance. I had been hearing about the Yeti for years, ever since I was a child, but I think that what eventually convinced me that they were there was meeting with the Sherpa people and talking to them face to face. They viewed the Yeti as a real living creature, not as a mythical creature. They called him the hairy man that lived out there separate from them.
Do you think they were just trying to scare the white people away, though?
Maybe. So
they're like, hey, maybe don't come here, because there's, like, a hairy dude.
That smells really bad.
Smells so bad. And you wouldn't want to meet him. And he's got big feet that also smell bad. So maybe move along.
That could very well be the case.
That's my theory.
So he describes on this expedition bringing 8 to 10 pictures. They had photos of a chimpanzee, a gorilla, and then a doodle of a primitive man. And they claim that when they showed those photos to the native people, they insisted that the Yeti looked most like the primitive man.
They probably just picked the scariest one.
Probably.
Or the one that wasn't a photo.
Or the one that matches what they've always... I mean, these people go into these expeditions with preconceived notions about what they're going to find. So... I don't know. Take everything with a grain of salt. This isn't very scientific.
I feel like this was a prank by the Sherpas. They're like, oh yeah, that guy. He's that way. Just keep walking forever.
So Slick and Byrne decided to split up to cover a wider search area. As Peter Byrne tells it, each made his own startling discovery. So he says, we started out from our camp in the early morning and we simply chose a mountain and I came across a line of footprints.
I simply chose a mountain.
Yeah.
Just wow, great process to this.
Look, not scientific. There's a mountain.
I simply chose a mountain.
In another part of... So they saw these footprints. In another part of the valley, Tom Slick and his Sherpa guides discovered a similar set of tracks, but these ones are important because they were in mud.
Finally.
So.
Finally, some tracks we can believe. Mud tracks.
It's important to note that there are large bears living in these areas, but we never attribute these tracks to bears.
Also, Sherpas, who I've decided love pranks.
Maybe they... I mean, honestly, they probably do. It'd be fun. Could you imagine? That's what I would do. Be like, yeah, there's a monster out there. Watch out. So a plaster cast...
This guy's gonna believe anything we say. Watch this. Oh yeah, he's really hairy and smelly and he went that way. And then they like run after him and they're just like, ah.
You would laugh for the rest of your life about
I know.
That. Remember those dummies that showed up and then they came back because they believed us? Yeah. That would be hilarious.
I'd love to show you where the Yeti is for 500 pieces of gold. How can you not scam someone like that?
For real.
They're just asking for scams. Hello, I'm here visiting. Do you have any scams?
They might as well. All right, so a plaster cast of the footprint was shipped to the United States to be analyzed. The print measured 10 inches long and 7 inches wide. According to anthropologist Dr. George Agonio, it was similar to the footprint discovered by Eric Shipton 6 years earlier.
Yeah, the toes are, like, not quite as creepy looking. They're more puffy.
Yes.
It's like a foot of a marshmallow.
So then in February...
It reminds me of Boo Berry.
Oh, yeah.
The cereal?
Yeah, a little bit. They're very squat toes.
Yeah.
I would be interested in seeing how they compare to bears' footprints, because I feel like they're probably similar. All right. In February 1958, Peter Byrne embarked on another expedition. On this trip, he met a Buddhist monk who had an amazing story to tell. This was his quote. He likes scotch, this old man. And
Oh my God.
And one evening, while we were sitting there having a drink and talking, he said to me, "You know that up in the temple we have a hand. Would you like to see it?" And I said yes. So
The only answer to that question is yes.
of course.
Doesn't matter if you're looking for a Yeti or not. Samantha, up in this temple, we have a hand. Do you want to see it?
I'm already running towards the temple.
Yeah, it doesn't
Before
matter.
you can even finish that sentence.
It doesn't matter if that's your impending death. Like, that's just how you're going to go.
I'm gonna go see that hand. So at the top part of the temple, he was shown a hand, which was about the size of a human hand cut off at the wrist. He said, "I considered it very significant, and I took some pictures of it immediately." He asked the Buddhist monk if he could take the hand,
Because he's so entitled and
just
selfish.
assumes he could. And of course, the monk said no. And then he asked if he could take a piece of it, and the monk said no.
You know how you go to someone's sacred place and they show you something really special, and then you go, "Can I take a piece of it?" Like, imagine if it's like, "Oh, here is the cross Jesus died on." "Oh, really? Can I have some?"
Can I cut a piece off of it?
No.
You
It's
cannot.
not for you.
No.
You're lucky I'm even showing this to you, guest.
Pretty much.
You're so fucking rude.
This guy is rude. So, the photographs of the Yeti hand were unlike anything scientists had ever seen before. Was it human? Was it
I
ape?
feel like we've never seen anything so stupid. Take this away.
Or was it in an entirely new species? That's what Robert Stagg asked. They needed the actual hand, of course, to actually analyze what it was. The next year, Peter Byrne... Peter went to this conference.
This is the best reenactment ever.
It's at this, like, hoity-toity, like, lunch establishment.
Tea
They're having
room or
lunch.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of dudes smoking. There's a few, like, arm candy ladies there. And then Peter is talking to this doctor, this anthropologist, I'm not really sure who he is, and he's talking about how the hand, and the guy is like, "Well, you would really need to see the hand."
Well, sport, we're really gonna need the hand, you understand.
And the Peter Burns was like, "Well, I can't get it," and then he just pulls a paper bag out from under his seat and plops it on the table, and out tumbles a human hand.
That's been all the little bones are attached.
Yes.
Which I think is something Samantha should just start carrying around with her.
Just a hand?
Yeah. So that when people, I don't know, are annoying you or something, you can just totally change the course of the conversation.
By just
Where
plopping.
people are like, "Samantha, did you watch the Super Bowl?" And you're like, "Let me tell you something." And then you reach out, you grab your paper bag, a handful, and you're like, "This is the human hand." And then you don't have to talk about sports.
This is a great strategy. I'm gonna
Because people are like, "Oh my god, why do you have this? Do you just carry this around with you?" And you're like,
yes. Brilliant.
And he's like, "Well, I probably couldn't steal the whole hand, but I could steal a finger."
Yeah, so then the next year, Peter Byrne returned to the monastery with another bottle of scotch, got the monk drunk, and then pulled the
I don't
thumb.
believe any of this,
He
but
pulled the thumb off of the hand and then took the thumb from the human hand and then wired it onto the Yeti hand.
like they would have noticed that was different.
I don't know how often they, like, looked that closely. He said it took him a really long time. So maybe he did a really good job. In the reenactment, he literally just winds some wire around this, like, plastic bone. But... But I don't know. They had to look different.
The idea of sneaking into a temple, getting a monk drunk, and then stealing the thumb off a mummified Yeti hand. This is like some real grade F Indiana Jones bullshit.
I know. And the guy who did it is interviewed for Unsolved Mysteries, and he's talking about it like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course I
Obviously,
snuck back in there and stole a piece of their artifact.
Which, I'm acting like this monk was a drunkard, but obviously I carry scotch with me wherever I go. That's one thing.
This was the quote. I cut the finger off and I replaced it with the human finger. It took quite a long while to wire the whole thing together and put it all back together and put it back in the box. And nobody ever knew anything about it and everything. Everybody actually was perfectly happy. They still had the hand and it still had its fingers. Well, minus one.
Yeah, it kind of didn't, dude. Because you stole one of them.
So the finger was brought back to London and sent to Dr. George Agonio for examination. He said, kind of like snarkily, that he sent it to 20 experts, which thought that they should look at the hand, and they were equally divided about whether or not it was human or whether it was some type of primate, known or unknown. Wow. So, yeah. Dr. Agonio then also put a tissue sample
But how would you look at it and go, oh, this is Yeti? 100% Yeti.
That's the thing. How do you prove it's a new species? It's just like a piece of bone. At the time, with the technology at the time, I don't know how you would...
Look at Curtis.
Oh, he's rolling around on the ground. He's the cutest.
Oh my god.
He's the cutest. So he also put a
I should have
tissue
named
sample.
him Little Yeti. Damn.
You could have called him the Abominably Smelly dog.
That's Lenny.
Yeah, well, that's true. So he put a tissue sample aside and kept it in his desk. It remained there for more than 30 years.
You know how you just have a piece of skin that might be from a Yeti on your desk?
Yeah.
And you never do anything
That's
with
normal.
it?
So when Unsolved Mysteries learned of the bone fragment in his desk, they asked the University of California to analyze it. The results were inconclusive, but seemed to indicate that the tissue probably came from a human hand. And then this is like my favorite part, because this doctor of nuclear medicine, Dr. Jerry Lowstein, basically says, this is the trouble with these sorts of analyses, is that if someone's a believer, they're just going to say, well, this is the evidence we need. You know, we didn't expect it to be an ape, so the fact that it's a humanoid in origin, all likelihood means that it's the missing link.
Yeti,
and then
Yeti,
cut
Yeti.
to Peter Burns saying word for word what the doctor just said.
Well,
he was
obviously.
He's like, well, obviously, we didn't think it was going to be an ape. Apes don't walk upright anyway, which is not true, Peter Burns. Learn more about apes. I don't know. You're trying to find the Yeti. Like, maybe you should understand. Like, they do walk upright. What? He's really dumb. Okay.
Your disgust is delightful.
He also has this, like, rich, accent.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is just, like, I don't know.
He's hilarious. He is like an ascot that's come alive.
He's wearing this little scarf, like, he's really wearing a scarf. Like, it's completely ridiculous.
Oh, of course he is. Samantha, he doesn't want to catch a draft. I feel like in some, maybe this was in a Sarah Vowell book, I remember just the tiniest fragment of this information, that some of the earliest English explorers who would go to the North Pole just brought way too much shit with them because they didn't understand how to pack light, and that was part of the reason that it was, like, hard for people to make it to the North Pole, is because they bought all this crap. And this one explorer who went, when they, found his frozen body and all of his stuff, he had brought button polish. He apparently didn't think he could survive in the wilderness without specific button polish.
Polish for his button.
And that makes me think of this dude who would probably think he was roughing it to, like, stay at the Four Seasons. You know what I mean? Like, this guy seems very pampered, and I'm sure he wanted to go to cocktail parties and tell stories about being in the Himalayas and looking for Yetis, but in a way, he doesn't really give a fuck.
Yeah.
He is so full of himself and up his own ass.
I believe that's true. So, basically, that's where we leave them, and then we get a few other Yeti sightings. So, Kurt Frittler shares his own unnerving encounter. Oh, this is the guy that heard the noise. This is the very thin photographer dude.
Oh, I've heard a noise, too. Is that a Yeti? I once heard a noise.
He said they made camp at 16,500 feet. When out of the darkness, a very loud, piercing call began that sounded like nothing he'd ever heard before. It seemed to move around him. It circled their campsite. It would get closer and then it would get farther away. It would call intermittently, and the call was always very loud and very piercing and very frightening. Mm-hmm. Then, Reinhold Messner, who looks like a Yeti himself, says that he got...
Wait, is that the guy with the big red beard.
Yes, and the luscious hair.
So red.
Yes.
Such a full red Viking beard.
So much
He
hair.
wins MVM.
Absolutely.
Even though in this case, it's most valuable beard.
The thickest hair also on his head I've ever seen.
He looks like an extra from the show Vikings or Game of Thrones or something.
Yeah, so he actually saw the creature from about 30 feet away.
Sure he did.
The quote was, "It was my impression that it's bigger than me. It was quite hairy and strong with short legs. The body was quite dark brown. It had black hair, long, like hair all over its whole body, and it had quite a lot of hair on its head," which I think is just him describing himself, except that it had dark hair.
He saw himself reflected in like a window or maybe a brook, and he just seemed a little bit vain, and so he was just like gazing, and he was like, "What? A Yeti?"
So then Peter Burns comes on again to say, "I have to leave it open that I do not know what the abominable snowman is, but I feel that there is a very good chance, probably 50-50, that something resembling the thing they are looking for does exist." Mm-hmm.
Look, maybe there's some Yetis out there. I kind of hope people never find them because they won't stay alive if they do.
No. Do you think the Yeti has as tight an ass as Bigfoot?
Oh my god.
We know from that Bigfoot special that the booty situation on Bigfoot.
Look, all right, send us some Patreon money. If we get enough, Samantha and I are going to go to the Himalayas and we're going to investigate. I feel like I know more about Yetis now than I did before this started.
I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about Yetis, I have to say.
I can't say that I ever did. It does seem like the real moral of this is white people ruin everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's true. That's just a true story. It's pretty hilarious. The reenactments are great.
Uh-huh.
Highly recommend watching this segment.
Yeah.
It was a delight.
It was a delight. I really enjoyed it.
If you could get some, I don't know, pedophores, really make a day of it.
Yeah.
Dress up. Possibly as a Yeti, or just put on your finest clothes.
Yeah, put on a nice wool sweater, like
yes, your best slippers.
At one point, Robert Stack is like clearly on a Hollywood set wearing like a parka, and then there's just like clearly fake snow. They didn't even do a good job of spreading it out because it's just in lines.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, okay, he's just behind a Hollywood studio.
It's a nice parka though.
It's a nice parka, but
it's like perfectly puffy.
Yes. I'm like, are we supposed to believe you're in the Himalayas,
yes,
Robert Stack?
They flew him to the Himalayas for that shot of fake snow.
Yes.
He was like, it's cold here. Can we just stay inside? They flew him to the Himalayas, but then they shot indoors because he was cold.
Yeah, well, it's Robert Stack. You gotta do what he wants. All right, one more mystery.
Okay, now we're getting to an unexplained death. Sort of? Not even really. We're getting to unexplained bones. We see a different... So we just saw a parka stack. Now we see a brown leather jacket. Mm-hmm. So we get two different casual stacks in this episode.
A rarity.
It opens up with, all of us have known people who have lived their lives outside the mainstream. That's me and Samantha. Adhering to their own rules. Marching to the beat of a different drummer. This is exactly...
Talking about us.
Exactly a description of us. In life, we find their... can't talk. Eccentricities...
Oh, now I can't say it. I said it in my head.
Eccentricities.
I can't even say it. Eccentricities.
Fascinating. But often, when a deeply private person dies, he leaves behind an unsolved mystery.
Very poetic.
Yeah, that's kind of like not true, but okay. We'll learn about Dr. Cary Stanton, who died in 1987. He was originally a doctor, but then in his 30s, he decided to return home to his family ranch and run that. Except that his family ranch is no ordinary ranch. It is most of Santa Cruz Island, which is gigantic and looks gorgeous.
It does. It really does.
Off the coast of California. So he lived there mostly in solitude, taking care of the land. He sort of felt like he was a shepherd of the land and was just put in charge of it, but it wasn't really his. I don't know. Yeah, sure.
Nice.
Cool. For some reason, we spent some time talking about how he had sort of a weird schedule, and he expected his guests to adhere to it, including getting up really early in the morning to help with the cattle, which I would have been like, no, thanks. Also, every day at 7:30, he was served a 5-course meal, and he ate the same thing on like certain days of the week every single week.
I mean, you know what you like.
Yeah. And then at 8:30, they would have coffee, and the only dessert ever served, oatmeal cookies.
very boring. I don't know that I could live my life like that.
I like a good oatmeal cookie, but every day.
Every day and nothing else? You could never have a chocolate cheesecake?
Yeah. You have someone who can make you a 5-course meal, but...
You don't have them make you cake pops every day?
Or tiramisu? Or
creme brulee? You aren't living your best life.
Carrie Stanton, he could have used some more desserts. But anyway, by 9 o'clock, just like Samantha, he was in bed. He also, on the island, he created a little cemetery for people connected to the island. It had a very small chapel in the middle and then a few graves. There was originally 14 graves, including his parents, which he had exhumed, cremated, and reburied on the island because that was important to him. But by 87, Carrie Stanton himself passed away, and then his grave was there too. He left the entire property to the Nature Conservatory, which is awesome. He had passed away at 64. So then that land is like preserved by the Nature Conservatory, like working with different agencies in California. I don't know. But in 1990, on April 27th, the Deputy Agriculture Commissioner, who was there to like, I don't know, survey some stuff or just whatever, part of them taking care of things, discovered an old metal box in a shed on the ranch, and inside was human remains. When they including what was apparently clearly human bone fragments.
Yeah.
So usually when you get cremains, they've been very evenly ground up. But if the reenactment to this is at all true, it was like little seashells. It was like a coffee can of like little seashells and bone bits, and it was not like a dust.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Maybe cremation techniques back then were
different.
I have no idea.
But along in the bone fragments, they found a few clues to the identity of this person. There was a clothing snap that dated to the 1940s. There were false teeth that dated to the 1950s. And there was a platinum wedding ring that was from before World War II, is all they said about that. And that they could tell from the bone fragments that it was an elderly person with minor arthritis, probably female.
I don't know how they could tell that from chips of bones, but...
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
There was... Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me either, but whatever. So the mystery is, who the hell did these bones belong to? And we are told that Carrie Stanton was very meticulous and labeled everything, so it seems unlikely that he was the person... He knew these were there and just left them.
Yeah.
Like, he also had been setting up the cemetery. Like, surely if he knew the remains were there, wouldn't he have put them in the cemetery or put them, like, somewhere where they belonged?
Or labeled them, you know?
Yeah, because they're literally just, like, in a container in a shed.
Yeah.
But... So this was an appeal to, like, does anybody know who these belong to? Should we be burying them in the cemetery? Should we be returning them to their family? Blah, blah, blah. There is nothing else about this.
Wow.
There is no update. And when I looked at it on Unsolved Mysteries Wiki, it says there's actually no outside verification aside from the Unsolved Mysteries segment on the discovery of these bones.
Oh. What happened to them?
I don't know. It almost, like, implies Unsolved Mysteries just made this up. It's like there's not a single newspaper article on anything about the discovery of these bones.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it has someone connected to his parents, and maybe his parents like planned to do something with the remains and never got around to it. But also maybe those were just seashells, and Unsolved Mysteries made this all up. I don't know.
Who knows?
But that is our last mystery.
All right, well let's rate the episode. So mysteriousness.
Okay. Let me think.
The Wanted isn't mysterious.
No.
The Lost Love isn't mysterious.
No.
Yeti, I guess, is mysterious?
It's really actually not that mysterious.
No.
We don't know who these bones belong to, but it's also kind of a shrug, a little bit.
Yeah. Were there ever bones? That's a mystery.
Yeah, I guess. Is Unsolved Mysteries just flat out? Is none of this real? None of these people died. Robert Stack isn't even a person. Trench coats haven't been invented. It's all lies.
Thumb sideways.
Yeah.
Reenactments.
I have to say a thumbs up.
Thumbs, absolutely.
Because the Yeti ones are so hilarious, and that hand coming out of a paper bag. Is there an Unsolved Mysteries gif of that? I need a gif.
I think I do.
I need a gif.
Unsolved Mysteries gifs. Call us up. Yeah, thumbs up for reenactments for sure.
I would like grow extra thumbs to give this a thumbs up.
What do you think about the fashion?
Actually, great fashion in The Lost Love.
Yeah,
I love the retro fashions in there. I love her being super stylish. And
at one point, reenactment Eleanor and reenactment John are wearing like Christmas sweaters. And
they're like out in the
woods
snow flirting with each other.
It's really adorable.
Yeah, so fashion, I would give a thumbs up.
Yeah.
You also get to see this hilarious English explorer guy who you kind of like can't believe could ever sleep in a tent. And yeah, thumbs up.
Thumbs up. And then Robert Stack.
I'm going to say thumbs up again because we get 2 different casual stacks. We get him pretending he's in the Himalayas when he's clearly not. We get him begging you not to drink and drive. We get him talking about what iconoclasts me and Samantha are.
Yeah, it's
thumbs
great.
Up.
Absolutely thumbs up. Out of a possible 5 Robert Stacks?
4.
4. This is definitely a 4.
This is solid.
We have a good Lost Love.
The Lost Love is going to pull at your heartstrings. I feel like they should make a movie out of their story.
Yes.
Possibly with a slightly happier ending. I can't praise the Yeti thing enough.
Absolutely.
I really think the Sherpa people were just like, yeah, go that way, away from me. And I respect that. Even though the mystery of the bones isn't that interesting, seeing the island and hearing about this kind of eccentric dude was cool.
It was cool. Yeah, I think a 4 it seems like a good.
I think it's very solid. Is it a nudist colony?
No. Is it a magic rock? No.
No.
But
it's
up
solid entertainment. You will not regret watching this
Highly
one.
recommend. Do you know much about the Explorers Club?
No.
I read a book recently about this the exotic fish trade, which probably sounds more boring. The book was actually pretty good. It's called The Dragon Behind the Glass. But I was reminded of that book when I was watching this episode because that book includes some history of the Explorers Club, which was just like rich white men that like got together periodically to talk about going exploring, you know, in places where people already live.
I discovered this. The home of other people.
They had this annual, like, banquet. It has a name that I'm escaping me now, but they used to eat exotic animals. Like, they would eat giraffe or, like...
Disgusting.
Yeah, like, up until, like, not that long ago. They would eat, like, hummingbird. You know, like, just...
The idea of a bunch of rich, pompous white men getting together to, like, eat endangered species makes me want to...
Yes.
I don't know.
And talk about exploring places that, are not unexplored in any way.
You won't believe the people I took advantage of in my latest trek.
Yes, it's gross. I wondered if these people were in the Explorers Club and if that was
It does have that vibe.
Yeah. But I don't know too much about it.
That should be the villain of a movie. Can we get a movie where the villain is the Explorers Club and then, I don't know, me and Samantha have to take him down?
That would be
something like that.
A great plot for a movie.
Someone write up that screenplay.
Yeah, that would be really good. Okay, so you already did your recommendation.
I already did my recommendation. I am going to tell a very brief story that I was reminded of while we were doing this. When we were talking about having a piece of a Yeti in your drawer. So when I was in the 7th grade, we did the frog dissection lab.
Yes.
Did you remember it well? Did you all also do that?
We dissected frogs. And rats, I think.
Okay, so that's when we did frog dissection. And me and my lab partner, I guess I shouldn't say his full name, but his name was Luke something. We got a prize because we successfully removed the brain and the brain stem of the frog. So I was very excited about this. And I'm sure this would not happen today, but my science teacher was like, if anyone wants to bring their frog home, show up with a jar. So I showed up with the next day with a pickle jar. And my teacher was like, yeah, no one else took me up on this.
Weird.
And I was like, that's weird. Give me my frog. So I had in my parents' basement until like not that long ago, my 7th grade award-winning frog dissection in formaldehyde. And my brother also brought home some things he dissected, some sheep eyes and whatever. And they were just in
Your
jars.
Parents just kept these things?
Yeah, they were just in jars in the bathroom me and my brother used. Forever. I think my mom insisted they were kept in the bathroom in case they broke.
Makes sense.
But she allowed us to have them, and they just, sat there on this. And I think
yours won an award.
Yeah, I got to wear a frog hat for the rest of the day. So, so they were just there for years. And maybe we only got rid of them, I don't know, 10 years ago. But they were there for quite a while. So then I'm at my 10-year high school reunion. I'm introducing Mac to people. I've been I've been talking behind their back for years, right? Yeah, Mac, you gotta meet this person. I've talked so much crap about them. Oh, it was great. It was a great time. And then I see my old lab partner standing in the corner, not talking with his wife. And I was like, oh, he doesn't have anyone to talk to. I'm going to go and tell him that I kept that frog for so long. Right? And so I go over and I was like, oh, introduce me to your wife, blah, blah, blah. So I tell this story that I just told you. And he just goes, wow, that's really gross. And I'm just standing there. Then there's an awkward few beats of silence. And then I literally, like a dad, just slap him on the back and go, well, enjoy your night. And walked away.
Amazing.
So that's a little...
Do you have a picture of this thing?
No, I don't.
That's a damn shame. What
anyway.
A treasure that was. We say treasure isn't real, but...
I think we named him Kermit. What a treasure, Kermit and his old pickle jar, just sitting in a bathroom for years and years and years as we brushed our teeth and took baths. Sitting there without his brain. The brain separate with the stem floating in the little jar.
So amazing.
I might have been a weird kid. I don't know.
So amazing. Well, look, now you have a very successful Unsolved Mysteries podcast.
It all kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like this podcast is, and I'm not actually saying this as a joke despite my voice, I really feel like this podcast has helped me get back to my roots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, time for your recommendations.
Okay. So... I've totally abandoned trying to read spooky books this month, but I do have a book recommendation. I want the full title for you, so let me pull it up.
Well, we can also update people on how we felt about The Haunting of Hill House. Something we've been teasing for 4 episodes.
Absolutely. We'll get to that. This is going to be pretty short.
Okay.
So, I've been listening to a lot of books on Scribd, which I recommended a few episodes ago. And Scribd is cool because it has a little recommendation of the day. And I was really not sure what I was going to pick up because I had read a couple things that weren't very good. And I was not sure that I wanted to read more spooky stuff. And then this was recommended. It's Unthinkable, An Extraordinary Journey Through the World's Strangest Brains by Helen Thompson. Helen Thompson is this brilliant science writer who has, a PhD. She writes for all kinds of different science publications. And, she's also a neuroscientist. I don't know. She's brilliant. It's interesting because I had just read The Mystery of the Exploding Teeth, and she, at the beginning of this book, talks about how when scientists used to write about case studies, they wrote about the actual person. It wasn't just, the symptoms in a bubble, or, whatever the malady or whatever unusual thing that was happening. It would be, a whole story about what the person liked, how they spent their day. It didn't, divorce, the person from, the unique case study or whatever it was about. And so she was really interested in about that, and she wanted to write about, particularly the human brain, and especially extraordinary brains. But she wanted to write a book in a way that kind of got back to those roots and really told the stories of the person in context with this other thing. So she tells the story of 9 people that have unusual brains. There's a person that could remember every day of his life in vivid detail. He could literally go back and tell you what he did on May 2nd, every May 2nd for his entire life. Just completely accurately.
There's actually some of that runs in my family on my dad's side. People with photographic memories who can remember on the 375th page of this book, the third line is this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about people that can remember, there's other people that can remember, it's autobiographical memory, is that they don't have photographic memories. They actually don't have a better memory for other things than anyone else. It's just that they can remember anything about themselves and what they've done.
Fascinating.
I know. And then she talks about mirror touch synesthesia, I think is what it's called, where you can feel other people's pain. So, if you're sitting in front of me and you, bite your lip, if I had that, I could feel I could feel the actual sensation on my own lip.
I feel like that's something I've wished on other people.
It sounds like okay, so she interviews someone who has it, who's a doctor.
Yeah,
which means that he feels people's physical pain all day long. That sounds absolutely wild.
But have you ever been trying to, explain pain to a doctor and they don't understand what you're saying?
Yeah, I think he's probably a great doctor.
And you're with, I wish I could just, make you feel that for a second so you, got what I was saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and I think he could also feel other people's emotions, which I think he uses it to be a better doctor.
Wow.
There was, let's see, I don't know, a whole bunch of things, but it's a very fascinating book. And what I liked about it the most is that she sort of puts it in context. She really tells the people's stories, and she talks about how we can use like these people's extraordinary brains to kind of understand ourselves better and understand like our relation to reality, our relation to ourselves. I don't know. It was very fascinating.
This just makes me feel boring, though.
Yeah, I guess, but there's also, you know what else is cool is she talks about how you can like use some of this knowledge to like change your own brain. Like she talks about how you can like remember, because there's people who win like memorization championships.
Yeah.
That aren't any different than you or me. It's just how they train their brain.
Okay.
And you can like literally train yourself to never forget, to be able to memorize anything. She talks about how you can make yourself hallucinate by just like using a ping pong ball and sitting in a dark room. Which I haven't tried yet, but I kind of want to. I don't know. So yeah, it's really, really fascinating. And I liked that she was telling people stories, but it wasn't to like use them as entertainment. It was like very, like, let's take a look at like how our brains can do these amazing things and how we can better understand the way like we understand ourselves. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It was very cool. It was kind of a little over my head because I don't have a PhD in neuroscience, but
you don't.
It was written in an accessible way, which I appreciated.
Have you considered getting a PhD in neuroscience?
I have not, and I won't, but I liked this book.
Can I get a PhD on Victorian seances?
That would be, you should.
I was thinking the other day, like, man, if they had taught me about the history of the occult in school instead of about the Revolutionary War 5 times, I probably would have been a much better student.
True.
Right?
We learn so many things in school that just, we don't.
Or I feel like, how many times did we learn about volcanoes?
Too many times.
I swear, just over and over. Like, we didn't have time for something else.
I've used that knowledge in no ways.
Could we have learned about the history of gargoyles or something while we were learning about the storm on Jupiter for the 8th time?
Oh my gosh. You're right. You're right.
Could have we been learning about parlor tricks and automatic writing? Because I would have gotten an A+++ on that unit.
Yes. Okay, so do we want to talk about our thoughts on The Haunting of Hill House?
I mean, I loved it.
I really liked it.
I thought it was super good.
Yeah. I finished the book a couple nights ago.
Literally finished it seconds before I needed to go to book club.
I enjoyed talking about it. So I've never read anything else by Shirley Jackson. And I thought, I don't know, it was surprisingly funny.
Yes. It's really enjoyable. It's more, I mean, it's spooky, but it's also very lighthearted at times. It is actually pretty funny. I laughed out loud a few times during it.
It's very dismissive of men, which, like, is kind of my shit.
This book has everything. Ghosts.
It has
female characters. Men revealed to just be boring nonsense that are around really just to cause tension.
Something we talked about in book club is that this book has a couple male characters that seem to only exist to like move the plot along or like motivate the female characters or whatever, which is something that's usually reversed. It's usually there's female characters in a story just to motivate the male characters or like, you know, move the plot. And I was kind of like, that's really refreshing. I really liked it. And you even had one character that realized that, like, this dude was really boring.
She was like, but there's nothing to him. He's actually quite dull. And I was like, this book is great.
So, yeah, really
I feel like you can interpret it kind of different ways. It leaves some stuff ambiguous, but it's very readable and enjoyable. It's got great ambiance.
Yes.
Great spooky time read if you can... If you're still looking for that, I suppose you're listening to this possibly on Halloween. Yeah. You want to stretch out your Halloween season a little longer.
It didn't even occur to me that this episode is coming out on Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween, everyone.
Wow, I fucked that up. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, I really liked it. I listened to the audiobook and enjoyed the reader a lot. So.
I read the physical book and I enjoyed my experience reading it. It's pretty short. It's only like 230 pages or something. So kind of almost a novella. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I recommend.
It didn't scare me, but it was creepy.
No, but it was. I feel like it has a charming amount of just atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think Shirley Jackson does a really good job. Like the house is described as being just unsettling, like everything's slightly off, and her narration style and the way she describes things makes you similarly feel like everything's off. I feel like I never really understood what the house looked like. The characters are always lost in the house. I felt like I was kind of always lost in the house, never really understanding where things were in relation to each other. So, I mean, yeah, it's very well crafted.
Very skillfully done.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the best things I've read.
I heard it's much different than the Netflix show, but I've heard the Netflix show is really good. I haven't watched it because I don't watch a lot of horror, but I think might
I'll
watch
watch
the
it.
first episode and see what I think.
I might watch it because I did really enjoy the book. I think I want that copy you have with the black pages. That seems really cool.
It was really cool. I'm going to enjoy putting that on my bookshelf.
And I think I need to read We've Always Lived in the Castle now.
Yeah.
Because I liked it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
So
it.
that's nice. I feel like we haven't done a fiction recommendation in a while, so that's nice.
Yeah. All right.
No, I think that's it. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
I hope you had a great spooky season. If you didn't get to do everything you wanted to do, just remember that you can celebrate Halloween every day. It can live in your heart forever.
It's really good advice.
So don't, because I used to be like, oh man, I wanted to do more, but I ran out of time. No.
Just make it your lifestyle.
You didn't. Go find a thing about Victorian seances.
Yeah.
Or listen to Perhaps It's You. And then the Halloweeny season can live forever.
Absolutely.
Just become a weirdo. That's all I'm saying. Become a weirdo. Join us. The Iconoclasts. Join us, dear listeners.
All right, you can join us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Perhaps It's You.
If you would like to send us a message, it's Perhaps It's You podcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your own paranormal tales, your ghost sightings, your UFO sightings.
Tell us what weird things your parents have kept in their basements from your childhood.
Yes.
I would like to know that. You can spend a little bit of your hard-earned cash on us. Patreon.com/perhapsit'syou. We are doing a tarot card documentary this month.
Yeah. Which
Probably,
is exciting.
if you're listening to this on Thursday, it might be out on Friday. I don't know. Before the end of the month.
Okay.
Well, Friday would be the first, so it maybe is already out. I don't really know.
We'll figure that out somehow.
What are dates? Anyway,
time is but an illusion. We would love a 5-star review from you on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
Keep our ego going. The recommendations are also all up to date on our website. That's perhapsitsyou.com.
Check it out.
There's our contact info and a little form if you wanted to send us a message that way.
Yeah.
Is that everything?
I think so.
5 listeners, go find a Yeti.
Yes. Send us a Yeti
Are
finger.
you an abominably smelly man? Yeah, don't steal from temples. That's just kind of a general rule.
But if you find a Yeti finger on your own, send it to us.
Yes.
All
and
right.
also, if you find a magic rock, we deserve half.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Solve some mysteries. Bye.